Thank you very much, Gloria, and I want to thank our hosts here at APAICS for all the work that you do in fostering Asian Americans to participate in government and in training our next generation of elected leaders. As Gloria mentioned, I am now a staff writer at USA Today after having been an editor at USA Today for the last few years. I oversaw all our coverage of politics and government, including directing our coverage of the 2006, 2008, and 2010 elections. After 25 years in journalism, mostly as a politics and government reporter and editor, I also like to volunteer my time with the Asian American Journalists Association. I was honored to be national president for a couple of years. AAJA this year celebrates its 30th anniversary at our convention in Detroit. We were founded in Los Angeles by Trisha Toyota and Bill Singh and other luminaries in our business, and I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about what we do. From my right, Julie Choi is Senior Vice President of Programming and Development at Mnet. Julie has extensive experience as a producer for network television and cable channels such as MTV, Lifetime, BET, and Oxygen, and she also helped produce the hit show Dancing with the Stars and The Biggest Loser. Richard Lewis should be a familiar presence to all of you. He is an anchor at MSNBC News, and he recently joined the Dayside team in September. Previously, before working at MSNBC, Richard worked at CNN Worldwide, where he covered a lot of big global hotspots and stories of the day in Africa and Asia, including the SARS epidemic and the oil spill cleanup in Louisiana. On his right is Giancarlo Pacheco. Giancarlo is president of the Plan C Group, a holding company that services the Asian American community in Los Angeles with business units in marketing, production, entertainment, and talent management. And at the end of the table on Giancarlo's right is Tejinder Singh. Tejinder is a White House correspondent for All Headline News Media Corp and also a correspondent for TV Today Network of the India Today Group. He has lived worldwide in countries such as Switzerland, Greece, Belgium, Germany, and India, and also has done some work with various other news organizations, including BBC TV and All India Radio. I want this time that we have together to be a conversation, so I hope that once we here on the panel talk a little bit about some of the questions that we've prepared, I will throw open to you in the audience. Feel free to come up to the microphones. Please introduce yourself and let us know where you're from, and we'll have a conversation today about the role that the media plays in the Asian American community and how we can work with groups like APAICS to foster a new generation of Asian Pacific leaders. And that's the question I wanted to start with. What role do you and your company play in working in making sure that there is an accurate portrayal of who we are as Asian Americans, both in traditional media like newspapers and TV stations, but also in some of the new media that you may be involved in? Julie, let's start with you.
Well, you know, growing up, I grew up in Laguna Beach. Grew up with all blondes and blue eyes, and the only Asian Americans in media was Mr. Miyagi and Connie Chung, while everyone else had beautiful, you know, actors and models. And so I always felt like it wasn't portrayed. Thanks. And I always felt like it just Asian Americans weren't portrayed accurately. And I always wanted to do something in the arts. And then, of course, I told my parents, they were like, no, you have to go to law school or go to medical school. And I was a good Korean daughter, and I went to law school, and then I practiced law for a couple of years at Universal Pictures. And then I decided it just wasn't fulfilling, so I wanted to do something behind the camera and portray Asian Americans in the way that it was just really lacking. So I produce shows for different networks, and I think as an average viewer, you don't see the stereotypes that are indirectly, subconsciously packaged and presented to you. For instance, I did a dating show. It's a huge dating show, very popular with the teens. I don't want to get in trouble and say what network it was, but it was a mandate that every fourth person that you see on screen is black, is African American. And I said, well, this is wrong, because what about the Asians, and what about the Latinos? And the network was like, well, I think you're making a big deal out of it. I said, no, actually I'm not. And also the music cue, you don't think about it, but the music that underscores what you see, it really has an effect, because music really drives movies and TV, whether it's action or sad. But every time an Asian person comes on, it's the stereotypical gong, or and you're like, hey, that's not okay. And I would tell the editors, since I was supervising producer, it would go through some rough cuts, and then it would come to me, and I'd say, hey, that's not okay. You can't have those type of music cues. Well, it's going to take so much more money to re-edit it and put these new music cues. And I felt like I was constantly fighting the different networks to say, you can't do that. You can't package something and then present it to millions of Americans and think that, they're not going to notice, because I notice, and then I know my friends notice. So I just got really tired of pinpointing everything. So when I talked to my agents, I said, you know what? I need to do something that I believe in. And that's when Mnet came in. And Mnet is the first English-speaking Asian American network that's carried in every city, from New York to LA, Honolulu, even in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's a channel that portrays Asian Americans as, without the stereotypes, and we speak English. We listen to normal music. We don't need a gong coming in every time we enter a scene. So I think I'm really excited to be with Mnet, and I'm really excited that there's a new network that portrays us as we are.
Well, Julie, we thank you for the leadership role you've been playing in the work that you've been doing with the networks, and good luck with your work here at Mnet. Richard, I want to ask you, you are a rarity in journalism today. You are an Asian male in broadcasting, and if you could talk a little bit about some of the stereotypes that you faced in your TV career, but also what do you try to do to encourage a fair and accurate portrayal of who we are as Asian Pacific Americans?
I think it's a really good question, Catalina. When I first got into the industry about 7 years ago, the question for me was supply or demand. In fact, I was talking about just a moment ago. Is it more of us guys of Asian descent just don't like to do it? Or two, is it because the networks aren't looking for that? I don't know the full answer. I do know that there's certainly some supply challenges that are out there for the marketplace when it comes to Asian males. And I think the question will take another 5 or 10 years to really kind of make its way through. But we can certainly see some amazing Asian American males that have stood out over the decades that serve as an example to me in what I'm doing today. So I definitely look to them for that sort of leadership. In terms of accurate and complete portrayal in media, I think that one way that, and I'll speak specifically to news, is to bring on faces that are Asian. And they don't need to talk about Asian things, like fortune cookies or, Chinese meals, and those are all great. But they just need to be speaking and on the camera to say, yes, they are part of the fabric of the United States. That they are financial experts, that they are comedians, that they are teachers. And I think that is the goal right now. Not that they need to, again, reflect their heritage, per se. If they do, fantastic. But that should be the ultimate goal. I do believe that is the running hypothesis, but I do want to hear from all of you during the question and answering period whether that is true. That is my assumption based on discussions with different leaders in the Asian American community. And how specifically can our company, NBC News, Comcast, none of you have heard of either of those two, what can we do? I think that our goal is to interface with the community as a news organization, is to understand who the electeds are, which we are now going to try to do. Our attempt will be to meet with the Asian Caucus on a periodic basis. That is our obligation, to understand what the Asian Caucus is thinking, what is important to them. I think also it is important that we create an advisory board of real leaders from the Asian American community, which we are doing right now. And I think it's also important that the Asian American journalist associations that are out there interface with the community too, as opposed to being at arm's length because we are journalists. We can still be journalists, but know our own community.
Great. Giancarlo?
So maybe I'll give a little bit of background for myself. I'm actually from San Francisco. I'm Filipino-American. And I think growing up, I too grew up among Caucasians and Latinos. I grew up in the Silicon Valley in San Jose. And I really felt that there was a lack of representation. I really kind of started noticing that there was a change, and I wasn't being recognized. And at that time, growing up, I felt like just everybody else. I felt like I was just, you know, an average kid. But then I realized when I got to high school, I started realizing that a lot of racism was coming to me. You know, those same Caucasian friends that I did have kind of turned on me, and it opened up a gateway for myself to really make a difference. So in college, I dedicated my life to really speaking up for Asian Americans as well as Filipino Americans. And I got involved with a lot of political organizations during that time. And I ran and was served as a president and board of directors of state organizations during that time to really give a fair depiction of Asian Americans. Now, after I graduated, I too was pressured into studying physical therapy, and I changed. I did something a little bit different, and I rebelled against my parents, and I switched into marketing and communications. And during that time, I kind of realized, you know, this is the way that I feel that I can contribute, is going back to the corporate world and making and becoming a leader in the community. And during that time, I dedicated 8 years to working at AT&T and climbing up the ladder, and still felt that there was something different. And at that time, I decided to become an entrepreneur and fulfill the dream of owning my own company and serving the community in a different way. So during that time, I was also doing a lot of events and doing a lot of PR for the Asian American community. And I realized that there was a lack of corporate representations among Asian Americans. And at that time, I said, this is an opportunity that I understand that there's a huge growth in the Asian American community. I don't know if you are up to date with the census. The 2010 census shows that we've grown to 18 million, past 15 million, so that represents 6.2% of the population. So at that time, I said, okay, well, I'm going to start evangelizing to these companies and saying, you guys got to support the Asian American community. And that's how the marketing agency really started to develop, and I started saying, wow, there's still a lot of lacking of corporate support for the Asian American community, such as like Procter & Gamble, which is the largest advertising company in the United States and probably in the globe, but they don't do any Asian American programming. So there's definitely something lacking. I am proud to say, as one of the clients that I serve, Verizon Wireless does tremendous work in the community. So there is definitely some movements that I'm seeing. So I think when I look at media, because as a marketing company, we also develop a lot of programs and we produce content, and we use social media, we use regular, media, advertising media to really reach this community. And what I'll still notice is there's even a lack of equal portrayal of Asian Americans. And that really comes down to the leadership of these companies lacking of equal representation among Asian groups. So I think in terms of what can we do, I think one is that we have to, endorse and get leaders, Asian American leaders, to come out. We also need participation.
Great, thank you. Tejinder?
Okay, my name is Tejinder Singh, and I have come to the US, it's less than 2 years. I came 27th of May from Brussels, Belgium. And when I came here, I was introduced to color, because in Europe, it's not there is no color, there is no demarcating lines about Asian Europeans or like that. It's just Europeans. But when I came here, I realized that there is these pockets, and I was very much I was a member of the AAJA, even from Brussels, and actually I was in touch with the Congressman Honda. A lot of times he used to give me statements from the US, long distance. But when coming here, I saw this kind of identity, and I will not call it an identity crisis in a way, because when I visited in 2008, I was in Korea visiting. I even went to North Korea, and I saw that the togetherness of Asia, which here we think that the Southeast Asia or Far East Asia, but there is an underlying current of togetherness, and that's very important, and that's very important what AAJA is doing here. And on the coverage, one thing, like if you ask me if this panel was on Osama bin Laden, I could have spoken for hours, because I slept less than 3 hours today morning, and yesterday I slept for 1.5 hours, and day before yesterday night, from 10 o'clock in the night till 1:30 in the night, I was at the White House. What's going on. And the coverage when I do, and last 2 days I've been on the TV live in India, and it's not so much about pinpointing Asian, but I liked what Julie said about the music, about this. Yes, that's, and another thing which stands out is that there are people who say that if you're an American, be an American, but also make sure that when the coverage is being given, that those cultures, those traditions are, kept alive in a way, because they really, by doing that, what we do is we do not suppress, or we usually bring so much color, so much extra flavor to the whole coverage, and that's something I really, want to do more.
Well, that's a good place to start our conversation. It ties into something that Richard said earlier about the need to get not only just accurate portrayals of the entire realm of the Asian Pacific community, but also to get more Asian Pacifics in the media, whether it's a story about education or a story about the financial crisis. And I just want to throw out the question that Richard did, which is I don't want to say which is more important, but how do we find that balance between being part of coverage every day, but then also taking a step and being advocates for better coverage? Richard, do you want to start?
Advocates. I'll get to that second. But the first part, which is how do we get more faces, right? How do we get them on screen? And I think from the news organization perspective, it is going to have to come from within. It's going to have to come from the top. I do believe that, at my time at CNN, as well as my time now, very short time at MSNBC and NBC News, for various reasons they have taken on at a very high level that they would like to engage the community, the Asian American community, in an active way. And this is through empowering and giving resources to their internal diversity councils. And that's not unique to Asian Americans, I believe. It's across all of the affinity groups. But specific to the question that you're asking about, How do you get those faces on air, yet at the same time also become advocates? And I think by just, and this is just a start, and I don't know the answer here, Catalina, is that just by having the faces on air, we cannot deny who we are when we answer the questions. It is part of who I am, unless I'm absolutely straight-arming my background. There are some of those who may do that, but in general, I think the majority of the Asian American faces, of the Hispanic, Latino American faces, and the African American spaces, et cetera, do bring who they are to bear in their answers. I've not found anybody yet that when we brought on a face that is of a diverse background on air as an analyst, that they would be shy about who they are. But they're not brought on to talk about that specific element. They bring it into the conversation.
Those are all really good points. Before I turn the question to Julie a little bit, let me talk a little bit about some of the things that various Asian American Journalists Association groups do to help you in your communities. One, I know that each organization on the local level has media outreach panels in which they help community groups write press release, learn how to write press releases, place news items in the local media. For a while, I was very happy and honored to help APAICS train its Asian Pacific leaders in how to conduct interviews. And I think the whole notion of being advocates for our community, you're absolutely right, Richard. We can't help who we are. I bring to the table at USA Today not only the fact that I am the granddaughter of two Filipino veterans who survived Bataan, but I also bring to the table the fact that I'm a woman, that I'm married, and I like baseball. And all of those figure into coverage as well. But Julie, let me ask you the question, a question that I've always pondered with people in the entertainment fields, and that is there such a thing as colorblind casting? Can we have Ming-Na play a U.S. senator but also turn to her when we need an Asian American face?
I think, John Cho, who I just saw a couple nights ago, he was the lead in Flash Forward, which was, he was the lead on an ABC primetime show. And I was so excited when that show came on because he's the first Asian American actor who came on, and it was just him. He was just American. He was an Asian American with no accent. And then he was in an indie movie that premiered this past week, where he, had more of an Asian American, and that's like I think that's like to our benefit. It's like we have the versatility to do that. As far as casting, it's I produced Dancing with the Stars, and I was so excited for for so many seasons. We didn't have an Asian American, and then when Kristi Yamaguchi, I was so excited to have her, and then, we had her, and she wasn't Japanese American, she was Kristi Yamaguchi, the Olympian, amazing mom. So I think we need to have people behind the scenes to help make those decisions. We need to mentor. Every show that I've produced, I always brought on Asian Americans who maybe didn't have as much experience, but they weren't given the experience because, I think that our older Asian American generation parents pushed them into a certain career. So I think it's really important to give people, younger Asian Americans, an opportunity and mentor them, and then they go on to produce shows, and then they hire more Asian Americans, and it just grows, and then we break the stereotypes. I think also too, we have a show called BPM, which is a daily show, and it's an open door to anybody who wants to come and talk to us about anything important. We've had Far East Movement, who was the first Asian American band to hit #1 on Billboard. That's historical. They came through and talked to us about, just representing Asian Americans. We had Lincoln Park, we had Heinz Ward in last week, who was so proud of being Asian American. He was born in Korea, and then he was raised by his Korean mother, and and Judy Chu, Congresswoman Judy Chu came a couple weeks ago, and she was so much fun. We asked her all these crazy questions, and she answered them. I asked her, if you had a choice between punching Gaddafi or Kim Jong-il, who would you punch? And I thought she was going to not answer it. Totally answered it. But we also talked about the Dream Act. We also talked about, you know, women's rights and the people's budget and just everything, you know. So I think we just need to have a voice and have a platform to portray people, Asian Americans accurately.
Let me take this opportunity to encourage all of you who may have questions to come to the microphones. I think our panelists really wanted to hear more from you than to hear ourselves talk about the issues that we face in our jobs. So if you'd like to come to the microphones, please do so. I wanted to ask Giancarlo, before we open up to questions, something about social media and new media. I am of the generation, to date myself, where when I talk about Asian Americans in the media, I am thinking about pioneers like Lloyd LaQuesta on TV in the San Francisco Bay Area, and of course Connie Chung. And when I grew up in San Francisco, I didn't see Asian American bylines in the Chronicle or the Examiner. But new media is different. In an era driven by clicks and driven by page views, we as a community have an opportunity to make a difference in those technologies. What do you see in the marketing worlds, and how do you see younger Asian Americans taking in very broadly a media career in those fields?
Sure. So I actually wanted to go back to something Julie said first. And I had the opportunity, as my company actually funded Far East Movement. Far East Movement, we managed them for 7 years, and I saw them from the ground up make it to #1 on the billboards. The first Asian American performers, you know, to be accepted. And it wasn't about color, it was about good music. You know, I also had the opportunity to work with Bruno Mars, another Asian American, Filipino American. So I think that the world is changing, at least here in the United States, among Asian Americans. And a great question in social media. So I work heavily in the social media space, and my company really gets behind these content producers, these entertainers. And if I were to tell you, out of the top 100, 11% is represented by Asian Americans. That's huge. There's only two African Americans, there's no Latinos, and the rest are companies or Caucasian. So that's humongous. The #1 most subscribed YouTube artist is an Asian American. He has 700 million views on his channel. So his name is Ryan Higa out of Hawaii, so the people in Hawaii. But we work with these artists and we fund them through corporate clients to support them. But what this does, it allows the mainstream media to pick up on this. They're picking up on what's taking place in the social media space because they have so much influence. When I take into account that 11%, there's millions of views. Within one production or a video clip that they will make, within 2 days they have over 1 million views. That outperforms any advertising, like for example, at least from an Asian standpoint, from a distribution standpoint, and it's clickable, it's trackable, you can actually see where they're coming from, and now what we're doing is delivering ROI based on those types of campaigns. So I think that social media is really going to change what we see in the future in terms of broadcast and cable TV networks. That's just my opinion, just based on what I'm observing. Is because there's been some crossovers. There's been, by the name of Kev Jumba, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but if you had the opportunity to watch The Amazing Race, he's a crossover from the social media world. Is they took an Asian American, a Chinese male out of Houston, Texas, and they put him and cast him into a show, The Amazing Race. And what they were able to do for the very first time was that they were able to communicate and actually film YouTube videos and tweet about his experiences as he was going through The Amazing Race. So I think that what social media allows Asian Americans, it gives us an equal platform. And I really mean equal because you have Filipinos, you have Chinese, you have Vietnamese, you have Korean Americans, they're all there. they're fully represented. But when you take a look at mainstream media, is that really the case? So that's why I really like what social media is becoming, and you know, we're such an advocate, as my company is behind a lot of these different, I'd say, programs that are taking place in the space.
Great, thank you. I see someone from the audience. Come right on up to the microphone and just let us know who you are, and feel free to ask a question.
Sure. My name is Tina Huang. I work for the State Department in the Bureau of International Information Programs. And as you guys are sharing about social media, it also occurred to me the local and international is really blurring, right? And at the State Department, and my bureau's mandate is to work with foreign publics, to engage them. And one of the questions I have, as some of the panelists have worked abroad, has been interacting with foreigners. The question about Asian Americans, perceptions of Asian Americans abroad is also a really challenging question. And I wondered, from your experience and also from just your work with colleagues in your firms, what is being done to also do the same things that you're talking about, you know, domestically, and whether or not there are organizations or specific individuals that are really pioneering in this aspect of just bringing the Asian American message abroad and engaging with foreign publics.
Great, that's a great question. Tejinder, you've worked abroad a lot. Why don't you start?
Actually, it's as I had mentioned in my earlier, that it's a new stuff here to see it, because in Brussels, for example, there are more than 1,200 journalists, and very, you know, percentage-wise, the Asian Americans are very few. And but I was elected on the panel of 25, API, and the people who supported me were Germans, the French, and the Italians, and there were less than 20 Asian American journalists there. So I could not have, you know. But when I came here, I realized that there is this segregation, and as some of my colleagues here were saying, that putting a face on the, and that face cannot deny that is what the origins. I have never denied excuse me, the origins, but there are times when you have to have that very subtle differences. You have to, should you go with this or should you go with this? But it is a complaint, and as you mentioned that with this social media, these boundaries of nations, are disappearing. So what is happening is that, as he said, that if you are putting something out, a tweet or a Facebook, the people who are coming there, we as Asian Americans, half the world's population is there. So not a million, but a billion hits should be not a problem for us in that's in social media. But then we have to be very, very careful that what exactly our intentions are. When we are talking about Asian Americans, we should not finally segregate ourselves into a complete. As an Asian American, I should be acceptable also to all other categories which are here.
Let me pose a question to the panel. There was a young woman who had a question, if you could just get ready. We've been talking a lot about the media role, but let me tie this back to APAICS and its mission. How do we relate all this back to activating voters and activating the Asian Pacific community to take a role into government? Anybody in the panel want to take that question?
I'd just like to add one thing that I have observed in these 2 years, that Asian Americans are very good at funding their lawmakers. The congressmen, the senators, they come to you before the elections, you give them funds. But it is time to start getting something back from them.
I think that how Mnet can work together is that, like I said, we have a daily show, and we have, if anybody has anything that they want to share with our audience from, we're everywhere in America, so if you have anything that you want to share, like Congressman Judy Chu came talk about the issues that she wanted us to be aware, come on through, talk to us, and we'll share those views with our viewers, our Asian American viewers. And we want to be that platform for our community. It's not just about entertainment, it's about our community and ways to make it better. So we're always open. If you want my card, I'll give it to you. You can email me directly.
Great, thanks. Let me go out to the audience. You had a question?
Yes, hi, I'm Judai, and I work as a community leader in Philadelphia as well as for other things nationally. And the theme that I found in your panel is that all of you want to encourage leadership, but I feel that it's almost in a vacuum of sorts, that we need the fuel and the vehicles, for example, when it comes to funding of corporations as well as the media to make this happen. So how do we tie that all in to create this new pipeline of leadership?
Well, let me try to take a stab at that. One thing that has changed from when I started in daily journalism 25 years ago is that now anyone with a modem and a computer really is a journalist. I anchor a news-oriented and news analysis-oriented blog, but you can't dismiss the impact that people with computers and modems have in getting information out and in driving the debate, particularly the political debate. And going back to the question I had asked earlier about how the media ties in with APAICS' mission of politics, is I would encourage all of you who are in community groups to take this opportunity in the upcoming presidential election to work with your groups to get the word out, not just about issues that pertain to Asian Pacific Americans, but how pocketbook issues affect you, how issues related to healthcare and the national healthcare law relate to you. And as we've said all along on this panel, that's how we all become part of the larger debate at hand. I'm getting the sign that we have just time for one more question. If you could get up to the microphone, please.
I have a very specific question. I'm Nina Ahmed, and I'm the chair of the Mayor's Commission in Philadelphia on Asian American Affairs. Specific question to all in media about immigration. What I haven't seen in media at large, not just Asian American media, is the discussion of how our foreign policy affects the rate of undocumented people in America. Because unless we address that question head-on and talk about it, the population at large is going to have this big backlash against immigration. And I haven't seen that paraphrased and parsed properly where people actually understand, for example, in the Cambodian community, why we're having such a large impact of deportations, given the fact that we had refugee settlement, which was done very poorly, and we didn't integrate children into a system where they felt that they were integrated properly, and as a result, a lot of problems occurred, which they're paying for now because of our immigration laws, and they're being deported. So if we don't understand that our foreign policy has affected much of this undocumented flow here, by foreign policy, I mean things that happened during the Vietnam War, things that are happening in our trade policy that is causing much of this to happen. I don't see a very thorough examination, and I would behoove our Asian American media to really delve into that, because that would change the whole tenor of discussion, especially for lay people who are just flicking on their TV and watching something. So if it's done in multiple ways, from an entertainment perspective, from an analysis perspective, from many different perspectives, if we could put that into the conversation, I think this backlash would reduce. So I hope you guys can do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? I would encourage all of you, I know that APAICS wants to move on and get on with its schedule. I would encourage all of you to have conversations during the next break with our panelists to learn more about what they do and how we interact with the Asian Pacific community. I want to thank each panelist for your time and also thank APAICS for inviting us to share a little bit more about our roles in the media. Thank you.